guys, it's Jen from over at worldofjencraft.com, and I have our third card from the Flying Home series today. So first off, I'm having to do a voiceover because I have a new mic and I forgot to turn it on when I did my video. So instead of redoing the whole entire project, I'm attempting a voiceover. Wish me luck on this one. Before we get started with the supplies, I wanted to share with you guys, I had a request on my first card to use a different coloring medium with this particular project, or with one of the cards. So I decided to go ahead and use it with this one. Now this was stepping a little bit more out of my comfort zone since we received the Stampin Write, or the Stampin Blends. That's the coloring medium that I've been going to. So for this one, I decided to go ahead and use the Stampin Write markers, which I forgot how beautifully they color. It's amazing. You move from one to the other and all of a sudden the other's old hat, and I don't do it. So what I decided is I took it a step farther and I chose to color out on 3 different papers using the Stampin Writes. So that one there is the shimmery white cardstock and the watercolor cardstock, and the card that we did today is using the Whisper White. Now, they're all very similar in how it turned out. However, there are subtle differences. The shimmery white cardstock turned out beautiful, but I feel like the Whisper White showed up a little bit darker and a little bit more vibrant than the other two. The shimmery white there is the one I'm showing, and the watercolor I found gave a softer look when I colored on that. So if you compare the two, the watercolor to the Whisper White, it was just a softer, more blended look. And then when I went over it with the Clear Wink of Stella, it just kind of helped to blend in those colors even a little bit more. Especially, I noticed a big difference on the birdhouse there. So it was kind of fun to be able to go and compare all 3 different variations. Now this one I'm bringing back what I used the Stampin Blends with. And if you'll notice, the Stampin Blends are lighter. They're a softer, kind of almost a more watercolor look to it. Now I did use Soft Sky and Bermuda Bay on the Whisper White project that we're doing today, where I used the light and dark Pool Party on the original one using the Stampin Blends. So I like how each of these is still just as beautiful as the other, but you can see the differences in the Stampin Blends and the Stampin Write markers. The other thing is I used the Memento Tuxedo Black for my image to stamp on the one on the left, the one I used the Stampin Blends, and I used the Archival Basic Black to stamp out on our project for today. So I have no idea what I'm talking about right now, but I did want to thank Toka for asking that question and making that request, because it allowed me to do a little bit of experimenting instead of just going to my go-to. So I really appreciate you asking that, and that reminds me, if any of you guys have requests, maybe techniques or something you would like to learn, or just have a question to ask me, please feel free to do so in the comments. So let's get started with the supplies. I used Pool Party Shimmer Ribbon, the Archival Basic Black Stampin' Pad to stamp out my image and my sentiment, the Petal Pair embossing folders. I used the floral version of it for this card. I absolutely love these things. The stamp sets are, of course, the Flying Home and the Thankful Thoughts for my sentiment. The Stitch Shapes framelits and the Layering Circles framelits are what I used. And of course, you don't have to use the stitched shapes, but I do like it for the extra dimension that stitching gives. The Stampin Write markers I will list out in this video, so that way you know exactly what I used, and I also go over them before I start coloring. And of course, Shimmer Trim, or Shimmer Wink of Stella, yeah, that's what it is. Can't forget about that. For cardstock, I used Whisper White is 5.5 by 8.5 scored at 4.25 for our card base, and then a 2 7/8 inch stitch circle. Pool Party cardstock is 4 by 5.25 and a 3-inch scallop circle. And Crumb Cake is 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and of course a white doily for the background. So the first thing I'm going to do is get started on my coloring, and I went ahead and went over the different colors that I used for it. I used Soft Sky and Bermuda Bay for the blue flowers, and Pear Pizzazz for the leaves, and whatever else I'm saying. That is, oh, I can't remember the color offhand, and Pink Pirouette. And then Daffodil Delight and Crushed Curry for the yellow. Rich Raspberry and Fresh Fig for the purple. Calypso Coral, and then Crumb Cake and Soft Suede for the birdhouse. And whatever reason that pencil was in my hand, I have no idea at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and color the image in and fast forward while I'm coloring. So it is done. I just absolutely love the way that turned out. And we're going to pull out the big shot here as soon as I get all my pieces together, in which we are going to emboss the crumb cake. Now, when lining up my embossing folder, I did just line it up in the center of my crumb cake. So nothing fancy on that. And using my original plate that came with the big shot as my base, and then I'll sandwich those in between the two plates. So there it is. That's the embossing. I just absolutely love all the texture on that. Just makes a big difference in the overall product. So we're going to go ahead and adhere that onto our Pool Party cardstock, and just leaving a little peek of that pool party on the outside. The common thread between all 4 of these cards was that I used a base that was your 4.25 by 5.5, and then the next layer was 4 by 5.25, and the last layer, on this one, the crumb cake layer, was 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. So those did not change on any of these cards. I'm going to go ahead and wrap my ribbon around to the back side of my card, and that's just going to get placed center in the embossing and the center of the crumb cake cardstock. And then what am I doing here? Oh yes, we're going to go ahead and we're going to adhere the doily to the front, and that's going to be kept over on the left side, centered between the left side and the top and bottom. And that's just going to go directly onto the crumb cake base. We're going to go ahead and adhere all of that onto our Whisper White cardstock, onto the card base itself, and then we're adhering the circle, the stitch circle, onto our scalloped circle. Whoop. I feel like I'm doing a play-by-play here instead of doing it as I'm going. And that is going to get adhered to the doily using our Stampin Dimensionals. And I put 5 on there, and generally I will go ahead and fast forward through this, but maybe I'll just talk through it this time. So I do like to put 5 on there so it's sturdy when I adhere it to my card base. And that's just going to go centered into the doily. Yep, there it is. Centered and ready to go. Then the next thing we're going to do is stamp out our sentiment. And we're using the archival basic black ink for that. And the sentiment that I chose, the thank you, was basically because it fit in that area. Again, with these cards, you can use any sentiment that you wish. But I do send out quite a few thank you cards, so I do like to have those on hand. So for tying our bow, I'm going to go ahead and bring the front portion of our bow forward towards me, and then bring the loop back behind my fingers and bring that through. And as I'm tying my bows, I do like to bring it in so it is smaller than what my finished bow size is going to be. So I just kind of grab and pinch in my fingers and then pull it with the other hand. And I'm going to do the same with this one. I'm going to pinch it and pull it from behind. And once I'm kind of satisfied with that, then I'll go ahead and give one final tug on it just to tighten it all up and get it to where I want it to be. So clipping off the ends. Yep. And they actually worked this time. I didn't have to go back and recut them. And that's just going to get adhered onto our card using a glue dot. I'm just going on top of our ribbon that we wrapped around. And I do like to put another glue dot underneath of that ribbon just so everything is secured onto the card. So that's just going to get placed in there and everything is going to stay in place where it belongs. Then the last thing that I'm going to do is use my Wink of Stella, and I'm going to go ahead and brush it on to all the leaves, the flowers, the bird, and the birdhouse. So that is it. That is our card. I just love the Wink of Stella, and it's obviously something that you guys don't have to put on there, but I do enjoy the extra shimmer and dimension that it brings to the cards. Now, the one thing I did want to point out is when you use your Wink of Stella with the Stampin Write markers, it will pick up the ink from the marker. So if you work from lightest to darkest, that usually works fine. So start with your lightest color and then work towards the darkest. And you also want to make sure that you are working with one color at a time so you don't transfer like your fresh fig or your rich raspberry onto your light pink pirouette. So that's the only thing that you do have to be careful with when using the Wink of Stella. When you use the Stampin' Blends, you don't have to worry about that. So that is our card for today. I just absolutely love the way it turned out. And again, I wanted to thank Toka for her comment and for request. And I also wanted to mention, which I did earlier, because I know that's kind of what I was going over in this portion of the video, but if there is a technique or something that you guys would like to see me do, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments because I do read and I do respond. Sometimes I might not get to the response right away, but usually within a day I'll get back to you. The other thing I wanted to mention was I was kind of tossing around the idea of doing a live YouTube kind of Q&A. So if there was any interest in doing something like that, I would be more than happy to set it up. And you guys, if you had any questions or feedback or anything, I'd love to be able to sit and chat with you guys. So if that's the case, leave a comment in this video and let me know if that's something you would be interested in, and I will schedule it in and work on a date for you. So thank you so much for watching. worldofjencraft.com if you would like printable dimensions and a supply list. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.